In the Muram world, there's a saying often used when absurd things happen. This is the law of Muram. This phrase has become an online meme, meaning only the strong can survive. A female office worker quite liked that saying. Whenever she read about the protagonist in Muram novels using this rule to smash their enemies' skulls, she felt incredibly refreshed. Any adult in modern society must have felt this way at least once. At the office, her superior suddenly handed her a huge stack of documents and demanded they be completed today. In her imagination, she unleashed a heaven-shattering palm strike to his face, avenging all the employees. Those were the moments at work when she felt like she was practicing the law of the martial arts. Suddenly, her superior asked if she had finished reading all the Muram novels he recommended, and she replied that she had. He praised her, while she just forced a smile and secretly thought that her performance review depended entirely on him. While her superior was pleased to find someone with a shared interest, she thought that he was the only one laughing. Although she read them to curry favor with her boss, she had to admit that they were genuinely interested. In those stories, the characters seemed as if they dedicated everything to martial art, but each of them had their own life, love, and romance. Sometimes, they even sacrificed their lives to protect their comrade. She secretly wished to live such a life just once. That's what she used to think, until a voice rang out, reminding her to do the laundry because she was constantly distracted. "Yes, I'm going now," she replied, but deep down, she had no desire to become an anonymous background character in a Muram novel. Another maid walked with her and warned that today's lunch was tonic, making her secretly complain about her sect that specialized in poisoning its subordinate. That's right, she had now become such a maid. She had become a subordinate of the foremost poison sect, the Tang family. In her new body, she desperately realized she had transmigrated into a deranged family. The Tang family was a complex clan. They could be reliable allies, but when against you, they were cunning enemies who would stop at nothing. It was a martial arts clan standing on the border between the righteous and the demonic path. Their weapons were poisons and hidden weapons, a clan she had never liked when reading novels. Yet, out of countless places, she had transmigrated precisely into the Tang family. Even worse, she had entered the body of a maid specializing in laundry. Another maid woke her up, announcing it was time for work on the third day since her transmigration. She resentfully thought about how she had gone from a corporate slave to a literal slave, forced to work tirelessly. When she lamented about the moral rules of the martial arts world, the other maid sarcastically remarked what morality a laundress needed. That person called her Songji and reminded her to do laundry in the designated area. Songji complained that the laundry was too much and heavy, but the other maid insisted because the Tang family elders were very sensitive. The other maid pulled Songji along while she worried that she hadn't memorized all the paths and would get lost. Suddenly, that person remembered and relayed the general manager's order, requiring her to gather at the family office before noon. Songji assented and then walked off alone. She secretly thought that usually when transmigrating, people would immediately know which story they were in, but she was completely clueless. No money, no power, and no support. She felt like her life was truly over. Amidst her despair, she wondered if she could survive. As she walked, she suddenly stopped and looked up, feeling something strange. Carrying the laundry basin, Songji confusedly wondered why she still couldn't find the laundry area. She mumbled, recalling the instructions, that upon leaving the hall and turning left, she would see a willow tree. Suddenly, she tripped, causing the entire laundry basin to spill onto the ground. Sitting amidst the mess, Songji desperately thought to herself. She couldn't believe she got lost right at work. A voice from behind asked where she was going, making Songji startle and look up. She saw a child wearing luxurious green robes and guessed that they weren't a servant. Suddenly, the two words green robes stunned Songji as she realized their meaning. In this clan, green robes were not something just anyone could wear. Only martial artists recognized by the Tang family had that honor. Understanding that the person in front of her had a higher status, she quickly explained that she was lost on her way to do laundry. That person bluntly called her an idiot, making Songji secretly angry at the attitude of the Tang family brat. The youth said that an idiot who didn't know the way also didn't know who they were, then ordered her to follow. Songji muttered, as she gathered her belongings, that even the children in this clan had no manners. She silently followed the youth through the corridors and courtyard. That person stopped and pointed forward, here, making Songji realize with a shock that the laundry area was right in front of her. Secretly admitting she deserved to be called an idiot, she bowed her head and thanked the young master. The youth warned her to quickly memorize the way, or she wouldn't even have gruel to eat. Before leaving, that person turned back and asked for her name. Songji happily intended to answer, "Ah, my name is," but she suddenly froze in panic, realizing that she didn't know her own name after 3 days in this world. Songji awkwardly replied that her name was not worth the young master's concern. The young master's blue eyes narrowed, gleaming with scrutiny. He decisively told her to leave, making Songji happily respond. She hurried away, thinking she had to leave before being questioned again. From a tree branch, another man in green robes had observed the entire incident. The man jumped down, and the young master's name was revealed to be Gunmyong. The man replied, "You called." Gunmyong called his name, Elder Tang Jong. Gunmyong asked the elder who the woman was. Elder Tang Jong hesitated before giving his opinion. He thought the girl just looked like an ordinary maid, but Gunmyong still couldn't shake off his suspicion about her. Meanwhile, in another area of the Tang family, Song-ji sighed in exasperation at the never-ending laundry work. Suddenly, she was surprised to see a strange sight. Many maids were gathering. One urged her, calling her Sohye, and told her to quickly come to Gwangawan. The maid took Sohye's hand, telling her to stay close by her side. Once in line, that person loudly asked if everyone was present. The maids unanimously responded to a man called the general manager, who was standing on a high platform. Standing next to him, a female manager looked into the crowd and noticed a suspicious person in green robes, despite looking like a maid. Sohye secretly wondered what there was to be excited about. No matter what meeting it was, a maid like her would still only have to go to the laundry area. Suddenly, she noticed a familiar presence. She worriedly wondered why that young master kept coming to this place. Sohye spoke up, suggesting that someone important like Gunmyong shouldn't frequent this place, but he replied that there was no place in the Tang family he couldn't go. Gunmyong asked if she was alright. Sohye honestly replied that the work was very tough. He remarked that she looked fine, but she insisted that it was very difficult. Gunmyong suddenly pointed out that she was washing clothes stained with potent poison, yet remained unharmed, while an ordinary person would be in critical condition just by touching them. Sohye was stunned, unable to believe her ears when she heard the words potent poison. She frantically asked why he was only telling her now, and Gunmyong replied that, because she handled the poison so casually, he thought she already knew. Trembling as she looked at her hands, Sohye fearfully asked if she would die and if she needed an antidote. Gunmyong calmly reassured her that she was perfectly fine and hadn't been poisoned at all. He further explained that, more importantly, they never wash clothes stained with poison, they burn them. He posed a sinister question: why would someone give her these things, which should have been destroyed, to wash? Sohye confusedly replied that she didn't know. Gunmyong smirked, saying that the answer was already too obvious. He coldly concluded that someone was trying to kill her. His words struck her like lightning, leaving Sohye completely speechless. She desperately wondered why it was her, and began to suspect that the maid's body she had just transmigrated into was not simple at all. Gunmyong flicked Sohye's forehead, a clearly painful flick. He burst out laughing, saying he was just kidding. Who would want to kill her anyway? Gunmyong suggested that perhaps the other maids just wanted to tease her because she seemed too predictable. Sohye was shocked to realize this was not a joke but a real murder plot. Gunmyong calmly said that she didn't need an antidote anyway. He asked if she felt anything unusual, and Sohye confirmed she didn't. Gunmyong explained that in this family, it was very difficult to survive without poison resistance, as poisons were researched right within the inner hall. Moreover, completely preventing poisons from spreading in the air was impossible. Therefore, even the servants had to endure this toxic environment. They had to undergo poison resistance training, which included drinking a weekly dose of poisonous tonic. Sohye suddenly remembered the horrible liquid she drank yesterday. It turned out to be poison. Gunmyong told her she didn't need to drink it anymore, then confessed he only visited out of curiosity about her abilities, which left Sohye feeling a bit disappointed. He advised her to go find Madam Jyn, to report that someone was playing tricks, and Sohye obediently called him young master. As Sohye left, Gunmyong secretly thought the reason he kept visiting her was because he suddenly wondered if he had been worried about her. Meanwhile, Sohye pushed aside her wandering thoughts and decided to prioritize dealing with the basin of clothes first. She carried the basin of clothes towards one of the main buildings. Inside an office, Madam Jyn and another man were diligently working. Suddenly, Madam Jyn looked up because she smelled something strange, just as Sohye spoke up to ask for entry. Sohye entered the room, holding the basin of poisoned clothes, and stated that she had something to report. Madam Jyn angrily stood up, questioning Sohye for daring to bring unwashed laundry into the office. Sohye calmly replied that it was oleander poison, causing the male secretary to stop writing. The secretary calmly looked up and said that, according to regulations, clothes contaminated with poison must be dealt with immediately. Madam Jyn was stunned and disbelieving, but Sohye affirmed that all recent laundry had been poisoned. Sohye explained that since no one would listen, she had no other choice. She bowed her head, saying she knew this action was impolite, but still had to come here. Standing in the middle of the office, Sohye reiterated that she had come despite knowing it was disrespectful. Madam Jyn confusedly turned to the secretary, calling him Elder Commander, and blaming the low-ranking servant. The Elder Commander stood up, asked Sohye to put the clothes down, and inquired if she needed an antidote. Sohye happily accepted, while the Elder Commander secretly thought that even though the young master said it was fine, it was better to be cautious. He approached and asked Sohye for her name. As he handed her a wooden box, he heard her reply that her name was Sohye. The Elder Commander repeated the name Sohye thoughtfully. He secretly wondered about Sohye's reaction to his question. After a moment, he told Sohye to leave the laundry there and depart. He turned to Madam Jyn, and said that he would personally investigate the matter. Sohye thanked him and bowed, asking to be excused. Leaving the room, she breathed a sigh of relief, no longer having to wash the poisoned clothes. But just as she reached the door, Madam Jyn hastily called her back. Madam Jyn stared at her, asking suspiciously, "Are you truly Sohye?" Held back, Sohye was confused by Madam Jin's question. Madam Jyn probed, "Are you really Sohye, Choryon's daughter?" Sohye replied that she didn't know who her parents were, but Madam Jyn insisted she looked exactly like Ryon. Madam Jyn reminisced about Sohye's mother, the most beautiful woman in the capital. She took Sohye's rough hands, feeling pained that she had to live such a difficult life. Sohye felt uncomfortable as Madam Jyn secretly blamed the patriarch for being too negligent. Madam Jyn suddenly decided to go to Sohye's room immediately. She declared that she would personally inspect and prepare everything Sohye needed. Sohye secretly marveled at the power of blood ties and thanked the mother she had never met. Madam Jyn seethed with indignation, thinking about how badly they had treated Sohye. She was horrified by the cramped room, while Sohye found it even larger than her old apartment. Madam Jyn wanted to move her immediately, but couldn't for the time being, causing Sohye to quickly refuse. Suddenly, she hugged Sohye tightly, and promised to move her before midnight. After telling Sohye to rest, Madam Jyn left. Sohye stood alone in the room, unaware that another maid was secretly observing her. The maid suddenly spoke, startling Sohye. She curiously asked Sohye what she had done wrong for Madam Jyn to come all the way here. Sohye immediately questioned back why that person hadn't told her about the poison on the clothes. The maid vehemently denied it, saying that Sohye herself had claimed not to be affected by the poison. Sohye was bewildered, not remembering saying that, while the other maid secretly thought she had lost her mind. Meanwhile, two other maids discussed ignoring the wicked ones in Shinya. The freckled maid continued to blame, asking why Sohye was saying strange things, as if it were her fault. She played the victim, scolding Sohye for not listening to her worries, and now blaming her. Suddenly, she changed her attitude, smiling and asking if that was why Sohye had gone to see Madam Jyn. Then she patted Sohye's head, praising that those kids deserved to be scolded, and invited her to dinner. Sohye secretly wondered what kind of person she was before transmigrating. In her thoughts, Madam Jyn found it strange when the patriarch was mentioned and considered him truly heartless. She thought Sohye would rather soak her hands in poison herself than face everyone. Sohye was stunned, wondering if she had truly done that. She realized she had transmigrated into the body of an ordinary maid. Suddenly, another maid with an arrogant expression blocked her way, announcing that from now on, Sohye would have to clean the training ground. Sohye immediately realized this was the Xinyan gang that the other maid had mentioned. She looked up at the group of people acting condescendingly, and confirmed it was them. Sohye secretly thought, since they couldn't make her wash the poisoned clothes anymore, now they intended to push her to the training grounds, which were filled with poisonous qi. Looking at the leader's malicious smile, Sohye couldn't understand how people could be so wicked. She boldly refused, declaring that she would not endure this like the original Sohye. The leader was stunned by her resistance, but Sohye interrupted and said she would talk. Sohye calmly began, "I understand you all don't want to clean the training ground." The leader sarcastically replied that Sohye's poison resistance was better than theirs, and that place was too dangerous for them. Sohye retorted that if the place was dangerous, no one should be forced to clean it. The maid leader replied indifferently, "Then there's no other choice." She turned around and declared she would send Songji to do it instead, leaving Sohye stunned. The maids triumphantly explained that because Songji's poison resistance was weak, if Sohye didn't go, then Songji would have to. Sohye clutched her skirt, suddenly understanding why the original Sohye had always endured the bullying. She realized they had threatened the original Sohye by involving Songji in this matter. In her mind, the image of Songji, her only relative who had always taken care of Sohye, appeared. Sohye knew that if she refused, they would truly push Songji into the training ground full of poison. She reluctantly accepted. "I'll do it. Where is the training ground?" The leader smiled in satisfaction, praising her attitude. She shoved a broom and an intersect token into Sohye's hand. After giving directions, the group turned and left. The leader didn't forget to threaten that if Sohye messed up again, she would face the consequence. Sohye stood alone, holding the token and the broom, her heart heavy. A guard at the gate gestured with his chin, asking if she intended to enter. After checking the token, the guard allowed her to pass. Sohye hesitated at the gate, wondering what kind of poisons awaited her. Stepping through the gate, she found herself lost amidst the magnificent scenery of the inner city. As she walked, she pondered Songji's words, that this place was only for direct descendants and high-ranking individuals. Sohye suddenly realized the clear distinction, as the outer city was only for distant relatives and servants. Sohye was overwhelmed by the beauty of the inner city, where vibrant red plum blossoms proudly displayed their colors. She wondered in astonishment if it was the season for red plum blossoms to bloom. As she reached out to touch a branch, she was inadvertently distracted. A stern voice suddenly rang out, Tang Gunmyeong shouting, "Who's there?" Startled, Sohye stumbled and lost her balance. She realized in a panic that she was falling towards the lotus pond. Just then, An arm caught her, and a familiar voice said, "It's you." The young man smiled, asking if she still hadn't learned the way. So-hee looked up, flustered, recognizing her rescuer and blurting out, "Young master?" Tang Gunmyong immediately flared up, shouting, "Young master? Who are you trying to insult?" The young man quickly intervened, "Gunmyong, that's enough." The man named Gunmyong immediately bowed in obedience, making So-hee wonder if their young master was truly a noble. The young man turned to So-hee, asking where she had gotten lost today, and she replied that she had to clean the training hall. When he learned she had to go to the training hall in the inner city, he remarked that she was truly often bullied, then told her to follow him. He ordered Gunmyong to stay, and the middle-aged man could only obey. Gunmyong sternly warned that if he didn't behave properly, he would personally discipline him, making So-hee jump and think she had been very well behaved. Seeing So-hee still hesitating, the young man turned back and asked what she was doing that was taking so long. Along the way, he explained that the place she had just entered was the back courtyard where he resided. He warned that this was a place where servants were not allowed to enter or exit freely, making So-hee realize that in Tang Gunmyong's eyes, she was nothing but an intruder. The young man continued walking and said, "By the way," he asked with a half-smile, "do you really not know the way, or are you pretending to be lost?" His question left So-hee bewildered. A giant blue energy python appeared behind him, and he said with a serious expression, "How strange." As soon as he finished speaking, he pinched So-hee's cheek and remarked, "I can't see through you," making her cry out in pain. He continued to speculate. Perhaps a normal maid, or a suspicious spy, while So-hee was still wincing in pain. So-hee's scream startled the young man, who looked surprised. "Oh no, I didn't mean to make you cry," he stammered when he saw So-hee sitting on the ground, sobbing. He tried to explain that he had only pinched lightly, but So-hee angrily retorted that she was in so much pain she couldn't breathe. The young man turned his face away, muttering that even her crying face resembled Huan's, which was truly distracting. He turned back, extended his hand, and asked if she could stand up by herself. Seeing So-hee still sitting and crying, he sighed. "Then there's no other way." He helped her up and declared, "I'll take you to the training hall myself." So-hee could only look up at him. Suddenly hoisted onto his shoulder like luggage, So-hee was so stunned she stopped crying, stammering, "Young master, don't say anything. I'll take you there immediately," he stated firmly. So-hee tried to explain. "It's not that the broom," but it was too late. The scene shifted to another place, with white camellia branches in full bloom. They had arrived. He asked So-hee if the pastry was good, and she nodded in confirmation. "Then eat this one too." He offered a larger pastry, and So-hee understood this was an apology. She took the pastry, secretly wondering how long he intended to feed her. Perhaps she wouldn't need dinner anymore. As she ate the pastry, So-hee secretly thought that the young man's sleeves were no different from a magician's hat. Walking behind him, she heard the young man still muttering the threats he had been saying for days. He furiously shouted the name of some enemy called Budaeju. Then, he announced that So-hee would have to wait about another hour before she could clean the training hall. So-hee secretly grumbled about the wretched people who wouldn't let others eat properly. Suddenly, a sharp dagger flew straight towards her. So-hee sensed the danger and immediately turned her head. With lightning-fast reflexes, she extended her hand and caught the weapon cleanly. The young man was extremely impressed by her astonishing reflex. So-hee stared blankly at the dagger in her hand, only realizing it was a weapon. She frantically threw the dagger away and cried out that she had almost lost her life. The young man smiled and offered to examine her hand. He took So-hee's hand while she was still anxious. A warm blue energy began to flow from his hand to hers. So-hee felt a strange sensation spreading throughout her body. The young man explained that she was very sensitive to qi and could quickly build up her internal energy. With a radiant smile, he unexpectedly offered to teach her martial art. So-hee was completely stunned by the unbelievable offer. She secretly wondered if this young master was aware of what he was saying. Just then, Tang Gunmyong appeared and shouted, accusing her of deceiving the young master. Tang Gunmyong loudly criticized a young man taking on a disciple, but So-hee proudly declared him her master. Deep down, she panicked, believing this action had broken all the rules of the martial arts world. Noticing her expression, the young master remarked that she seemed to have a lot on her mind. So-hee awkwardly tried to change the subject to her searching for the thrown dagger. Just then, a young martial artist appeared and respectfully greeted the young master. The young master mischievously called himself an old man, causing the martial artist to hastily greet him as elder. Through their conversation, So-hee learned that the martial artist's name was Bukyung, and the young master was none other than Elder Tang Jong. She was dumbfounded when she realized the true identity of the person she had just accepted as her master, an elder of the Tang family. Memories flooded back, and she recalled information from the novel, confirming that this was indeed the legendary rejuvenated Poison King Tang Jong. Tang Jong reassured So-hee, while she gradually accepted the fact that she had transmigrated into the world of the book. When Bukyong was about to ask about Sohye's identity, Tang Jong cut him off. Tang Jong unexpectedly announced that he was considering adopting Sohye as his daughter. This declaration left both Sohye and Bukyong speechless with shock. Tang Jong merely asked nonchalantly if an old man wasn't allowed to be sentimental. Bukyong tried to object, arguing that Sohye was just an ordinary servant, and this decision was too sudden. Tang Jong explained that it was precisely because she wasn't of the Tang family bloodline that he wanted to adopt her. He said he was lonely, and asked Bukyong to relay a message to someone named Muhyuk. Then Bukyong turned to ask Sohye's name. The girl softly replied that her name was Sohye. Upon hearing the name, Tang Jong immediately showed interest and asked about its meaning. He even suspected she was Muhyuk's youngest daughter, leaving Sohye completely confused. In response to Tang Jong's question, Sohye replied that she didn't know who her parents were. Hearing this, Tang Jong accepted that he had been mistaken. He then wondered why someone living in the Tang family wouldn't know the patriarch's name, and asked if she was new to working there. Sohye secretly thought that was entirely accurate, as she had only transmigrated here a week ago. Tang Jong then invited her to his residence for tea, but Sohye refused, saying she still had to clean the training ground. Immediately, he ordered Bukyong to do it instead, leaving him bewildered. Under the elder's stern gaze, Bukyong reluctantly accepted the order. Sohye awkwardly handed the broom to Bukyong, secretly apologizing as she herself had no authority. They walked together to a magnificent building, Tang Jong's residence. Inside was a room filled with books and valuable objects. Tang Jong told Sohye to sit down and said that despite his youthful appearance, he still had his own rules. He asked if she knew how to make tea, and Sohye honestly replied no. Tang Jong gently said it was fine, and he would teach her, even promising her some tea leaves to take home. He handed Sohye a hot cup of tea, and she politely accepted. Taking a sip, Sohye realized it was Dream Awakening tea, a rare and precious tea that 10 years' worth of salary couldn't buy. Realizing the value of what she had just drunk, she was so astonished that she spat out the tea. Tang Jong nonchalantly offered, "Become my disciple, and you can drink this tea any time." Noticing Sohye's hesitation, he remarked that her personality seemed stronger than her appearance. He continued to make enticing offers. He would feed her well, give her a generous allowance, and protect her from other servants. Sohye awkwardly replied that it was a great honor, but she was just an ordinary servant. Tang Jong smiled sharply and asked, "So, are you refusing me?" Sohye frantically explained that she was just afraid she wasn't good enough, but Tang Jong happily made the decision for her. He told her to rest today, making Sohye ask blankly if it was only for today. Tang Jong instructed that, starting tomorrow, she would continue her usual work but must come to him at the end of the Shen hour. Sohye thought to herself with resignation that he had decided she would learn martial art. He also told her to eat a full dinner to grow, but she secretly thought that he wasn't exactly big himself. The scene shifted to Tang Jong's private residence as dusk fell. Sohye bowed to ask for permission, and then left, with Tang Jong's approval. Immediately after, a man named Gunmyong approached. Tang Jong asked Gunmyong about the results of his investigation. Gunmyong reported that Sohye was an orphan, making Tang Jong think it was just a coincidence of names. He recalled that no one could survive after consuming Black Star Red, and that mother and daughter pair were truly stubborn. Gunmyong continued to report that Sohye had an innate resistance to poison, and was ostracized for her striking appearance. He emphasized that she had been acting strangely for the past 7 days. Tang Jong pondered, realizing that period coincided with when he met her. He suddenly thought that was precisely when he encountered this child. Tang Jong grew suspicious, wondering if she was an assassin, and Gunmyong suggested investigating the disguise map. He coldly ordered Gunmyong to proceed with the plan. Tang Jong wondered if he had picked up a hidden gem, or a poisoned one. Finally, he decided he would have to investigate himself to find the truth. Night fell over the Tang family. As she walked, Sohye sighed tiredly after a tumultuous day. She couldn't believe that cute young master was actually an old monster, and now she had become his disciple. Sohye cursed her bad luck for falling into this terrifying world, and for naively believing Tang Jong was a child. Who would have thought that face belonged to the grand elder of the Tang family? Even so, she found some comfort in finally knowing which novel she had transmigrated into. It was Namgung Chonha, the first wuxia novel her manager had recommended to her. The plot wasn't particularly special, starting with the protagonist winning the martial arts tournament for the younger generation. Afterward, he traveled the world to revive the Namgung family, and became its patriarch, making the Namgung sword art renowned throughout the land. With these achievements, people bestowed upon him the title Sword Emperor. Sohye tried to recall more, but couldn't, wondering how other transmigrators could remember every detail. She only remembered that the protagonist, Namgung Hui, was upright if you spoke kindly of him, but frankly, he was quite rude. He often used gentle words to provoke the villains in the story. When the villain couldn't bear the anger and lunged to attack, he would shout, "Die!" Namgung Hui merely smiled and easily dodged the attack. Then he elegantly defeated his opponent, a sight that made So-hee secretly admire him. Returning to reality, So-hee realized that to survive, she needed accurate information. Currently, there were two crucial pieces of information she needed to confirm. First, whether Namgung Hui would attend the upcoming Five Great Families tournament. And second, whether the faction coveting Namgung Hui's talent had given him a potent poison. Namgung Hui received the potent poison after winning the martial arts tournament, so if Tang Jong currently possessed it, it meant everything was happening before the tournament. So he desperately wondered how to find the necessary information. She feared that even one wrong question could lead to her being branded a spy, stealing divine elixirs and being eliminated. Upon returning to her quarters, another maid was waiting and called her name. The maid seemed worried because So-hee was late, while So-hee could only mumble an apology. Feeling suffocated by how nothing was going smoothly, So-hee was helped to bed by her friend when she was found to have a high fever. Lying in bed, she struggled with the dilemma of living ignorantly to preserve her life versus living with purpose. Before falling asleep, So-hee secretly wished she could return to her old world. The next morning, her work began again with sweeping the tiled courtyard. So-hee secretly thought that her hope of returning home today had once again vanished. She went to see Tang Jong and wondered why he had called her earlier than the appointed time. He explained it was to avoid unnecessary misunderstanding. Tang Jong smiled and gave her the additional task of cleaning his entire room. So-hee was stunned as she recalled the dusty room from yesterday. She remembered the other maid's warnings that the elder was very sensitive and difficult, so she had to be careful not to draw attention. In her imagination, Tang Jong transformed into a giant black cat, roaring and chasing away the frightened maids. Even so, So-hee told herself that being entrusted with cleaning must be because he had a good impression of her. Tang Jong suddenly asked if she was done crying, making So-hee confusedly reply that she was. He told her to put the broom aside and hold out her hand. So-hee obediently complied and placed her hand in his palm. He remarked that her hands were too small to wield hidden weapons and thought she needed to eat more. Tang Jong placed a coin in So-hee's hand and told her to try throwing. Tang Jong pointed at a tree and asked So-hee if she saw the red cloth tied to it. He ordered her to throw a coin to hit the cloth, astonishing So-hee, who thought the distance made it impossible. Tang Jong smiled, casually telling her to just throw it. Although she was certain the coin would fall halfway, So-hee still prepared to throw. She put all her strength into throwing the coin towards the tree. To her surprise, the coin hit the target with a strong impact. The red cloth was torn by the throw. So-hee was completely stunned, not understanding why she had hit it, while Tang Jong looked amused. He continued to challenge her, asking her to hit a blue cloth on another, even more distant tree. So-hee had told herself that the previous time was just luck. She threw the coin once more. Although she believed it would be very difficult this time, the coin still embedded itself directly into the blue cloth. Tang Jong remarked that her strength was truly impressive, while So-hee remained utterly bewildered. He told her to go pick up the coin. As she ran to the tree, So-hee couldn't believe what had just happened. She wondered if her abilities were truly that good. Even more astonishing than tearing the cloth was that the coin had embedded itself deep into the tree trunk. So-hee suddenly had an epiphany when she realized something. She recalled her extraordinary stamina, washing clothes all day without getting tired. That was the power of this body. So-hee speculated that her parents in this world were likely martial artists, as physical talents are often inherited. So-hee secretly thought that she seemed to be constantly getting into dangerous situations. She felt uneasy. Since learning about the power of this body, a simple schedule had been established. Each of So-hee's days began with sweeping at Tang Jong's pavilion. After lunch, she spent the entire afternoon practicing coin throwing. In the evening, she returned to her room and memorized the 1,000-character classic. Despite the simple schedule, So-hee felt like she was dying from exhaustion. In particular, the coin-throwing practice was what drained her strength the most. Coin-throwing was one of the tasks Tang Jong assigned her, with the goal of throwing coins into the pond to catch fish. Of course, this practice wasn't because they had money to spare. Tang Jong explained that memorization wasn't the only method. The ultimate goal was to control countless variables. He pointed out that every day, the wind direction, wind strength, and even the air's weight change with humidity. The practitioner must be aware of all these changes to adjust their force and speed accordingly. With that, Tang Jong flicked a coin, and it flew accurately, embedding itself into a koi fish in the pond. He said that was the realm they were aiming for, a refined and elegant discipline. He also remarked that it was far more beautiful than the crude displays of strength by swordsmen. Tang Jong confidently said that So-hee would soon understand this joy too. Returning to the present, he handed So-hee a bag of coins. He ordered her to try catching fish with coins from now on. So-hee was stunned, but Tang Jong firmly stated that he would make her continue until she succeeded. So-hee recalled that coin throwing was originally a basic exercise in the Tang family's memorization technique. But ever since that day, she had been trapped in the hell of coin throwing. She lamented that the carp seemed to have gotten used to it and had become astonishingly agile. Exhausted on the floor, So-hee was reminded by a roommate to get into bed. The friend, folding clothes, called So-hee's name, seeing her still sprawled on the floor. Suddenly, a male voice from outside called Sohye's name, making her wonder who would visit at this hour. Her roommate recognized it as the young master's voice and excitedly urged Sohye to go out. After responding, Sohye was quickly pushed out the door by her friend. She peeked out the door and saw a young man waiting outside. The ash-haired young man politely apologized for disturbing her sleep. Sohye cautiously asked why the young master had come to see her. The young man looked displeased and asked her to call him Brother Huan as before. Although Sohye hesitated, Huan remained firm with his request. Hearing her call him Brother Huan, the young man smiled with satisfaction. While Huan explained that he was worried because of the long journey, Sohye secretly wondered about his strange behavior. Huan suddenly remembered, and said he had brought a gift for her. He presented an exquisitely crafted butterfly-shaped hairpin. Sohye was horrified, recalling her former boss's words that giving a hairpin in wuxia stories was a marriage proposal. Huan also told her to keep the gift a secret, because he hadn't bought it for Juhui or Chohui, which confused Sohye even more. Regaining her composure, Sohye refused, saying that the gift was too precious for her to accept. Huan tried to persuade Sohye to accept the hairpin he brought back from Hubei. He gently placed the hairpin in her hand and apologized for making her uncomfortable. Huan smiled, saying he had no intention of pressuring. He then changed the subject, offering her a snack instead. Sohye shyly accepted the small gift bag, while Huan said he just wanted to give her something. Huan said goodbye, telling her to go inside and rest. Sohye stood there silently, holding the gift bag and watching his retreating figure. Before leaving completely, Huan turned back and assured her that she could always come to him if she needed help. Watching his back, Sohye secretly thought that perhaps she had been too sensitive and he wasn't a bad person. Her roommate rushed out to ask about her as soon as Huan left. Her friend explained that Huan had come to see Sohye as soon as he returned, even though guests from the Juge family had already arrived. She also revealed that those guests were the young master's maternal relatives, and that the meeting of the 5 great families was about to take place. Afterwards, her friend looked at Sohye suspiciously, saying that she seemed very strange lately. Sohye quickly used fatigue from work as an excuse to evade the topic and invited her friend to go to sleep. Meanwhile, starting with the Juge family, guests from other major families arrived one after another, keeping everyone extremely busy. Amidst the hustle and bustle, Sohye still adhered to her routine, secretly thinking that she couldn't go outside due to the elder's instruction. She recalled Elder Tang Jong's warning that her appearance was very striking and could lead to unnecessary trouble. He also angrily stated that those who dared to flirt with beautiful maids should be deposed. Tang Jong instructed that he would be busy entertaining guests for a few days, and if anything happened, she should use his name or seek out Gunmyong. Sohye told herself that she was just a maid, and staying put inside, as the elder advised, was definitely the safe. Sohye wondered if she would be unable to gather necessary information if she kept staying within the wall. She missed the carp again, annoyed that it was swimming even faster than usual today. A sudden voice rang out, taunting that at this rate, creating a wishing pond would be faster than catching the fish. The person continued to analyze that fish move in a streamlined straight line. Sohye turned around, and a strange boy said that with such a throwing method, she wouldn't hit it, even if she threw 100 times. She was surprised, wondering who had just appeared. Looking at the boy's attire, Sohye deduced that this person did not belong to the Tang family. She guessed this was a guest's child, while the boy asked if she had understood the problem yet. The boy explained that she had to observe the fish's movements if she hoped to graze its scales. Seeing Sohye still bewildered, the boy irritably called her idiot and then took her hand to guide her. The boy told her not to pull her hand back and to focus on the throw. Under his guidance, the coin was thrown perfectly. It flew straight and hit the carp directly. The boy proudly asked if he was right, and Sohye had to admit it. Dissatisfied with Sohye's attitude, the boy arrogantly asked if she knew who he was. Sohye merely thought to herself that he was a rude brat who had trespassed into the elder's courtyard and guessed he was a guest of the Tang family. The boy proudly declared himself Namgung Hui, the young master of the Namgung family, leaving Sohye stunned. She couldn't believe that the legendary Namgung Hui was this child. More importantly, Sohye realized that the main character was still too young, meaning she had arrived much earlier than the story's main timeline. Feeling a headache, she decided to put aside the complex thoughts and accept that the boy in front of her was indeed the young master. Namgung Hui haughtily demanded Sohye show respect, while she secretly thought he was truly impolite. Nevertheless, she told herself not to get angry. As he was the future pillar of one of the 5 great families, she decided she should fulfill her duty and lead the guest from the Namgung family to his resting room. Sohye secretly thought that, as the young master of the Namgung family, it was improper for him to spy on another family's training. Namgung Hui was surprised by her silence. Sohye regretted not saying those words, instead blurting something out and leaving. She remembered that she could rely on the elder if anything bad happened. Suddenly, Namgung Hui stammered an apology, which greatly surprised Sohye. The boy anxiously asked about her wrist, wondering if it hurt much. He offered to give her medicine, but but So-hye tried to refuse and asked if he was lost. Nam Gung-hui insisted that she had to use the medicine, saying it was a high-grade ointment made by his uncle himself. Just then, Nam Gung-hui's stomach rumbled, breaking the atmosphere. So he smiled, realizing that this boy was wandering around because he was both hungry and lost. The boy still enthusiastically urged her to go inside and apply the medicine because it was very good for bruises. Finally, they both arrived at the guest quarter. So-hye was secretly surprised that the stubborn boy had actually followed her all the way into the reception room. She worried if the elder would be angry, but then thought he might actually like someone so bold. Nam Gung-hui took out the medicine box and explained that his uncle, Wan Ryong, was the head of the pharmacy, so she could trust it. So-hye was astonished. A high-grade ointment made by the head of the Nam Gung family's pharmacy was something a low-ranking servant like her would never get to see. She smiled in thanks and thought she would take some back to apply to Songji's hand. Nam Gung-hui advised So-hye to apply the medicine regularly to heal quickly, and she obeyed. He suddenly asked if she had eaten lunch yet, and invited her to dine with him. So-hye was startled, thinking it was improper for a servant to sit at the same table as their master. Nam Gung-hui casually dismissed it, saying that his sister Yona still drank tea with her maid Gyo-gyo every day, which secretly flustered So-hye. He explained that Yona was his youngest sister, and Gyo-gyo was her maid. So-hye understood his meaning, then decided she should feed the hungry young man something before he left. She smiled and offered to arrange a meal right there. Nam Gung-hui joyfully exclaimed his agreement. Looking back at his serious expression from before, So-hye guessed that he must live in a very strict family. Seeing the boy clear his throat awkwardly, she secretly thought, "What protagonist? He's just a child." When the meal was served, So-hye arranged the dishes, while asking Nam Gung-hui if he had ever left Sichuan. He replied that he had lived his whole life in Dingzuo, then asked her in return if she wanted to go to Anhwa. So-hye replied that she had only heard it was very far, then changed the subject to ask if this was his first time in Sichuan. Nam Gung-hui confirmed, saying that he had wanted to come 5 years ago but was stopped by his sister. He explained that he didn't even know how to ride a horse back then, which made So-hye curious to ask his age. Nam Gung-hui proudly stated he was 13, then asked her age in return. So-hye replied that she was 15, becoming even more certain in her heart that this boy was the protagonist. Suddenly, Nam Gung-hui mumbled, "Then that won't do," leaving So-hye confused. She remarked that his sisters must care for him deeply, and Nam Gung-hui confirmed that he was the only son, with 3 older sisters. So-hye secretly marveled at the thought of 4 future sisters-in-law, then invited him to eat while it was still hot. Nam Gung-hui complained that even though he was grown, his mother and sisters still treated him like a child. So-hye ate and replied that it was because they worried about the young master. He recounted that his father had roamed the martial world at his age, while this was his first time leaving Anhui. Nam Gung-hui secretly thought that he could do everything well too. While eating, he suddenly paused, catching So-hye's attention. She was startled to see his unusual expression. Nam Gung-hui covered his mouth and coughed violently, making So-hye panic and call out, "Young master." She quickly stood up, anxiously calling out young master Nam Gung's name. It turned out he was just experiencing spiciness, not poisoned, making So-hye secretly think that Sichuan cuisine was too spicy for outsiders. She worriedly asked if he needed tea or wanted the dish cooked with less seasoning. Nam Gung-hui tried to act tough, declaring that members of the Nanggong family never retreated, but in So-hye's eyes, he only looked more like a child. She suddenly thought that children were so predictable, unlike elder Tang Jong, whom she hadn't noticed anything unusual about. After finishing his meal, Nam Gung-hui sighed in relief, and So-hye thought that since he ate everything, he would surely grow tall. He cleared his throat, then turned to ask So-hye if she had ever tried Anhui cuisine. When she replied no, he immediately introduced that the food there was very delicious and not spicy. He also boasted that the tea from his hometown was excellent. Nam Gung-hui proudly recounted that even the Shaolin abbot favored Yunwu tea from Huangshan, making So-hye think he was boasting to mask the spiciness. So-hye politely replied, then asked if he had finished his meal. Immediately, Nam Gung-hui excitedly suggested that she take him to explore the market. So-hye was stunned, awkwardly repeating Elder Tang Jung's instruction that she was not allowed to leave the courtyard. So-hye secretly thought that ever since transmigrating, she had never once stepped out of the Tang family's manor. Nam Gung-hui confidently said that they couldn't get caught because his father wouldn't allow it, so they had to sneak out. So-hye worriedly reminded him that the guards at the outer gate would recognize him immediately. The boy then came up with the idea that they just needed to jump over the wall. So-hye frantically refused, saying she couldn't jump over walls, but Nam Gung-hui insisted the wall was only 3 zhang high. She despairingly looked at the wall, nearly 10 meters high, and wondered how she could possibly get over. So-hye called out to the young master in vain, then was surprised when he was no longer there. Soon enough, he was standing outside the courtyard, hastily urging her to hurry up. Sighing at the exhaustion of having to look after this child, So-hee finally cleared the meal and exited through the main gate. For the first time, she saw the bustling scenery outside the manor. Fortunately, the main street appeared right before her eyes, and So-hee thought that by just going straight, they would reach the market. Nam-gung-hui turned to her, calling her a boring child. So-hee calmly replied that she had said she couldn't jump over walls, unless the young master carried her. The boy immediately squatted down, offering to carry her over, making So-hee secretly think that one day he would cause big trouble. She quickly made the excuse of men and women should not touch each other, which surprised Nam-gung-hui, who asked if she read the class. To deflect, So-hee quickly pointed forward and said that the market was right there. Nam-gung-hui was immediately drawn in and excitedly ran off, making So-hee sigh in relief that the boy was easily distracted. At a stall, Nam-gung-hui curiously looked at the items on display. The two walked together through the crowded market. Suddenly, Nam-gung-hui stopped and curiously asked about something ahead. A street vendor warmly greeted Nam-gung-hui as he approached her stall. She invited him to try the freshly fried glutinous rice cakes, which looked very appetizing. Nam-gung-hui excitedly held up 2 fingers, ordering 2 cakes, making So-hee secretly think he was thoughtful enough to buy one for her too. The vendor stated the price was 5 pun, and Nam-gung-hui happily agreed to pay. So-hee was horrified to see him pull out a whole silver ingot to pay for a snack worth only 5 won. She quickly grabbed his hand, exclaiming in a panic that the amount was too much. Nam-gung-hui innocently replied that he only had the silver ingot, but So-hee insisted that he couldn't pay like that and that she had coin. After So-hee paid, the vendor wished them a good meal, while So-hee wished her good business. The two walked together, enjoying the hot rice cake. So-hee asked Nam-gung-hui to explain his recent action. He pouted, asking why he couldn't pay with a silver ingot, making So-hee realize he was sulking. She began to explain that it was too large an amount, and that he shouldn't give someone such a huge sum in front of everyone. Nam-gung-hui thought it was good for the old woman, but So-hee retorted that that was precisely why he shouldn't do it. She explained that the people around them had seen him pull out the silver ingot. In So-hee's imagination, a thief might break in, kill the old woman, and steal the silver ingot. Nam-gung-hui asked again in shock, unable to believe that people would go that far. So-hee emphasized that too much wealth can sometimes become a disaster. Nam-gung-hui bowed his head in regret, admitting he had almost caused harm to the old woman, and So-hee concluded that good intentions don't always lead to good outcome. He looked at her with different eyes, admitting that she was very smart. Nam-gung-hui suddenly wanted to go back, making So-hee ask in surprise if he wanted to see more. Nam-gung-hui decisively turned away, declaring that he wanted to go back. So-hee worriedly wondered if she had done something wrong again, or said something too presumptuous. They walked back in silence, passing by the whispers and chatter of passers-by. So-hee's expression remained full of doubt as she followed him. As they neared the gate, she noticed a group of people gathered and frantically guessed that they were looking for the young master. An older man called out Hui's name with a look of relief, confirming So-hee's guess. Nam-gung-hui politely bowed and told his father that he had gone to the market. His father placed a hand on his son's shoulder, gently reprimanding him for wandering off in an unfamiliar place. Nam-gung-hui promised to ask for permission next time, but So-hee secretly thought about the contradiction in his words. Nam-gung-hui's father then noticed So-hee and asked him who she was. Nam-gung-hui unexpectedly declared that he wanted to take So-hee to Anhui, and asked his father for permission. His father was completely stunned by his son's sudden proposal. So-hee was no less astonished, secretly thinking that this young master must have lost his mind. The discussion moved indoors, where Nam-gung-hui's father began to inquire about the matter. He reiterated his son's intention, and Nam-gung-hui confirmed that he wanted So-hee by his side because she was smart. His father confusedly asked if So-hee had done something to force him. Nam-gung-hui looked bewildered by the question, while his father told himself that his son was only 13 and didn't know anything. He chuckled, dismissing his idle thoughts, and asked his son if he had consulted So-hee. Nam-gung-hui confidently replied that since she hadn't cried, she would surely like it, making So-hee secretly grumble. Finally, Nam-gung-hui's father turned to So-hee and seriously asked for her name. So-hee replied that she had no surname, her name was simply So-hee. When asked about her parents, she calmly stated that she was an orphan. Nam-gung-hui's father then made a surprising offer, asking if she wanted to come to the Nam-gung family. So-hee politely refused, explaining that she was under the tutelage of Elder Dokwang of the Tang family and could not decide on her own. Nam-gung-hui's father asked in surprise if she was referring to Elder Tang Jong, and So-hee confirmed it. He turned to his son and said that this plan wouldn't work, making Nam-gung-hui confusedly ask why. So-hee was stunned when she heard him explain that if she left, the Tang family would cripple her tendons and bones, rendering her disabled. He added that it was the fate of a martial artist who left their sect, especially with a strict place like the Tang family. Nam Gung-hui hastily argued that Sohye was just a servant without a dantian, knowing no important secret techniques, but his father asserted that the Tang family had an iron rule that all martial arts must be kept within the family. Sohye secretly thought that she was the one who had to deal with this, not understanding why Nam Gung-hui was so angry. She panicked in her thoughts, feeling that she had been tricked by the elder into a slave contract. Sohye recalled Tang Jong's radiant smile and was certain that he had never mentioned these terrible things. She associated this cruel punishment with a conversation from her previous life and shivered at the family's madness. Just then, Tang Jong appeared and greeted Patriarch Nam Gung. Nam Gung-hui's father recognized him as Elder Dokwang, and the two exchanged greetings. Tang Jong explained that he came because he heard the child under his care was here and asked permission to take her away. Nam Gung-hui's father immediately agreed, and Tang Jong then called Sohye out. Sohye staggered to her feet, complaining to the elder that her legs had gone numb from sitting too long. Tang Jong teased Sohye, asking if she was using him as a palanquin, while she coyly called him elder. Suddenly, Tang Jong scooped Sohye up, making her cry out from a cramp, but he coldly told her to be quiet, as she had caused enough trouble. As they were about to leave, Nam Gung-hui called Sohye back, and she replied in surprise. Nam Gung-hui promised to return double the money spent at the market tomorrow, but Sohye said it wasn't necessary. Overhearing the conversation, Tang Jong questioned Sohye about lending money to the Namgung boy, making her frantically urge him to leave quickly. Ignoring her pleas, Tang Jong scolded Sohye, calling her a brat, then leaped into the air with her. They landed on a nearby rooftop. Left alone, Nam Gung-hui quietly pondered. Tang Jong continued to move at high speed across the rooftops while carrying Sohye. After landing, Tang Jong released Sohye, and she immediately asked him a question. Sohye wondered why the elder always liked to take shortcuts by climbing walls. Tang Jong casually replied that traveling by road was troublesome and roundabout, then asked her in return why she was so surprised. Sohye then changed the subject, saying she had just heard something scary. She asked if it was true that those who learned the Tang family's martial arts would have their tendons and bones severed if they left. Sohye sighed in relief, thinking the Namgung family was mistaken, but Tang Jong unexpectedly interjected, saying that normally they would be killed. Sohye was stunned, unable to believe what she had just heard. Tang Jong explained that an idiot who wanted to be expelled surviving could harm the Tang family. Then he squinted and asked if she was planning to leave. Sohye hurriedly waved her hands and explained that she had just happened to overhear it when young Master Namgung tried to take her to Anhui. Tang Jong burst out laughing, pinched Sohye's cheek, and said that this girl should learn to hide her thoughts. Tang Jong pinched Sohye's cheek, remarking that she hadn't cultivated any internal energy. He suddenly grabbed her neck, noticing that she also had no dantian or signs of external martial arts. With a cold gaze, Tang Jong asked why Sohye was looking at him like that. Sohye trembled in fear, wondering why he was suddenly emitting killing intent, and if she had said something wrong. When Tang Jong released his hand and called her name, Sohye secretly wondered if it was because she had gone to the Namgung guest quarters. Tang Jong suddenly asked if Sohye's memory was problematic. He explained that she had lived in the Tang family for over 10 years without knowing anything, making Sohye secretly thank him for giving her an excuse. Sohye immediately went along with it, admitting that one day she woke up and couldn't remember anything. Tang Jong said he had heard that people could lose their memory after drinking a medicinal decoction, horrifying Sohye about this family's poison. As they were walking, Tang Jong said he was going to greet his grandfather. A light-haired young master named Huan appeared, and asked Sohye in surprise what she was doing there. Tang Jong annoyedly questioned their relationship, asking Huan if he also had a habit of teasing subordinates. Huan denied it and called Tang Jong grandfather, then revealed something shocking. Sohye is our youngest sister. Sohye was completely bewildered, while Huan asked Tang Jong if he still remembered Choryan of Wolhyangru 16 years ago. Tang Jong froze as he recalled the past and suddenly realized, looking at Sohye in astonishment. Huan confirmed that this girl was indeed Choryan's daughter, Sohye. Immediately, a terrifying pressure emanated, making both Huan and Sohye painfully clutch their chests, struggling to breathe. Huan fearfully called out, "Grandfather," while Tang Jong stood amidst the raging aura, whispering, "This." Tang Jong gritted his teeth, his face full of fury, and cursed under his breath. "These madmen!" Tang Jong roared in anger, his entire body emitting a terrifying blue aura. Huan anxiously tried to calm his grandfather, but Tang Jong snapped back, asking if he looked like someone who could be calm. He pointed at Sohye, furious that a direct descendant with a toxin-immune body was being treated like a servant. Tang Jong dismissed Huan's explanation, asserting that Sohye's father had deliberately abandoned her. For a moment, he was horrified to realize he had almost killed his own great-granddaughter, who possessed a once-in-a-century physique. Sohye felt an immense pressure weighing down on her, making it impossible to breathe. Huan also struggled to resist, realizing that Sohye couldn't withstand his grandfather's aura. The aura was too strong for Huan to bear, causing him to cough up a large mouthful of blood. So he watched in horror as Huan vomited blood right in front of her. She felt her consciousness slowly fading, unable to hold on any longer. Sohei's body went limp, beginning to collapse onto the floor. Tang Jong rushed forward in a panic, shouting Sohei's name as she fell. A soft groan escaped, as Sohei slowly opened her eyes and woke up. She found herself lying on a bed, with Tang Jong sitting beside her with a gentle expression, informing her that she was awake. Sohei suddenly sat bolt upright, but Tang Jong gently told her to lie back down to avoid dizziness. With a remorseful expression, he sincerely apologized for losing control and acting rashly. Tang Jong then revealed that he was her great-grandfather and told her to call him grandfather. He turned to Huan, who was also in the room, and told him to rest. Huan refused, saying he wanted to stay a little longer because he was worried about Sohei. Tang Jong sternly ordered Huan to rest, saying not to make his younger sister feel guilty and that his blocked meridians needed recuperation. Huan gently told Sohei to rest well, and then he would leave. As Huan turned his back, Sohei was stunned to realize that blocked meridians was a fatal illness. She recalled the manager's explanation in her old world, that this was a rich person's disease. Sohei bitterly thought that only the rich could afford treatment, while the poor could only die in obscurity. She worried about Huan, secretly blaming wuxia authors for being so cruel as to let talented individuals die young. After Huan left, Tang Jong also said he would go out and told Sohei to sleep here tonight. He sternly stopped her, saying her body was too weak to sleep on the floor. Tang Jong tucked Sohei in and then quietly left. Sitting alone, Sohei began to piece everything together. She realized the reason everyone was acting strangely was because she had transmigrated into the body of an abandoned illegitimate child who possessed a toxin-immune physique. Sohei recalled cursing the crazy Tang clan, only to bitterly realize she was one of them herself. She feared that this direct lineage identity would push her into an even worse situation. Overwhelmed, Sohei silently screamed in despair, wishing only to return home. A moment later, she followed Tang Jong and hesitantly asked where her great-grandfather was going. Tang Jong coldly replied that they were going to the clan's ancestral hall, which greatly confused Sohei. When they arrived, two guards immediately bowed and greeted the Grand Elder. The guard was about to go in and announce their arrival, but Tang Jong waved him off, deeming it troublesome. He scooped Sohei up and jumped straight over the wall, ignoring the cries of the poor guard. Standing before a large door, Tang Jong called out the name Mu Hyuk. Inside, a handwriting calligraphy paused. A stern man named Mu Hyuk looked up from his writing desk, greeting his arriving grandfather. Tang Jong declared to Mu Hyuk that this was his daughter, Sohei, and that he would be the one to raise her. Mu Hyuk narrowed his eyes, his gaze filled with displeasure. Tang Jong firmly stated that he had to accept this decision. Mu Hyuk asked again in astonishment, demanding that Tang Jong not interfere with his daughter's upbringing. Sohei felt anxious as she met the powerful man's gaze. She tried to offer a friendly smile, wondering why this father looked at her as if she were dirt. Mu Hyuk questioned Tang Jong why he was causing trouble, while Sohei secretly lamented that her smile had no effect. Tang Jong angrily exposed that it was because of Mu Hyuk that a once-in-a-century genius like Sohei had to rot away in the annex. Mu Hyuk coldly replied that he had fulfilled his duty by taking in the courtesan and her daughter so they wouldn't starve. Tang Jong scoffed at his reasoning, causing Mu Hyuk to yell in anger. Consumed by rage, Mu Hyuk growled that he was only following the clan's rules. He unleashed an overwhelming aura, challenging his authority as clan head and causing Sohei to collapse, struggling to breathe. Sohei was terrified to witness a father openly threatening his own grandfather like this. Tang Jong easily dispelled the pressure, scoffing that this was not a matter of power and helping Sohei breathe again. He sternly warned Mu Hyuk that the power granted by the council could also be taken away. Mu Hyuk was stunned by the threat, stammering to ask what he meant. Tang Jong ignored him, asserting one last time that he would raise Sohei and called for her to follow. Sohei obediently complied, though still with a bit of hesitation. The two left the room together, leaving the clan head immersed in his rage. In a fit of rage, clan head Mu Hyuk clenched his hand so tightly that he broke the brush pen. He sat back alone, immersed in angry and helpless silence. Meanwhile, Tang Jong and Sohei had left the main residence together. Noticing Sohei was still stunned, Tang Jong gently asked if she was all right. Sohei forced a smile in response, but secretly cursed her irresponsible father in her heart. Tang Jong smiled, saying that getting angry was right, and in this world, only the wicked survive. Feeling supported, Sohei felt a little relieved. Tang Jong decided that today's training was pointless and invited her for a walk. He suggested a trip to the mountain behind, a place that brought back many memories. Sohei happily accepted, her face brightening considerably. In the blink of an eye, Tang Jong had brought her to the spot, and told her to open her eyes. Sohee was astonished by a beautiful small forest filled with countless vibrant flowers. She joyfully exclaimed that she loved this place as they strolled through the picturesque scenery. Tang Jong found a spot to rest under a tree and called Sohee closer. He poured a green liquid into a bowl and offered it to her. Sohee was stunned to realize he had just used his internal energy to instantly boil the water. She curiously asked if he could freeze water, like ice magic. Without needing ice magic, Tang Jong easily froze his bowl of water, astonishing Sohee. He promised to teach her later, but Sohee remained skeptical, knowing this was a skill of the highest masters. Tang Jong looked at her with a serious expression, reaffirming his promise to teach her. Tang Jong said that now that he knew Sohee carried the blood of the Tang family, he couldn't let her talent go to waste. He declared that he would teach her poison arts, and the process would be much faster, since she wouldn't have to suffer after consuming poison like others. However, he warned Sohee to maintain her maid status until she could protect herself, especially from Moo-hyuk's malicious third wife. Sohee was stunned, unable to believe that the clan head had 3 wives. Tang Jong confirmed it and asked if she had never met them, to which Sohee replied that she didn't remember anything. He reassured her that her ignorance was understandable due to her isolated life and amnesia. Tang Jong began the first lesson, explaining that the Tang family was the overlord of Sichuan, but also had to contend with 2 other major powers, Qingcheng and Emei. He posed a question on how to avoid being suppressed by these 2 powers, then offered a suggestion himself about strengthening military forces. Tang Jong smiled, praising it as a good method, but not the most important one. He drew a map on the ground, and emphasized that the key was to expand the family's influence in Sichuan. Sohee quickly guessed that the main method was through political marriages, and Tang Jong praised her intelligence. He began by introducing the clan head's first wife, Juga Moran, the beloved daughter of the Juga family. The second wife came from the Peng family, the only daughter of the powerful Baekpeng merchant guild, and the third wife came from the Zhou family, the daughter of a great magnate in Hunan, who controlled most of the grain and cotton. After drawing a diagram of the relationships, Tang Jong asked Sohee what she saw. Sohee thoughtfully deduced that the marriage with the Juga family was a political alliance to maintain the balance of power. She further analyzed that the remaining 2 marriages were to secure financial resources, supplies, and control the flow of goods. Tang Jong confirmed with satisfaction that her deduction was entirely correct, but warned that the other families were just as calculating as they were. He revealed that all 3 of the clan heads' wives shared a lifelong goal, to place their own children on the throne and seize the Tang family's power. So he suddenly realized that the problem wasn't her existence, but the fact that she had become the great elder's disciple, turning her into a target in this power struggle. Tang Jong calmly took a sip of tea, reassuring Sohee that as long as he was here, no one in the Tang family could touch her. Sohee thought to herself, she was now completely relying on this grandfather. Tang Jong cleared his throat, changed the subject to her studies, and asked how much of the 1,000-character classic she had learned. He reprimanded her for her slow progress, emphasizing that a direct lineage member must be proficient in literature. Sohee was bewildered. She had thought learning only poison arts would be enough. Tang Jong explained his philosophy, that all things share a common origin, and to one who understands, poison and medicine are no different. He concluded that to properly use poison arts, one must first master the medical arts of healing. Sohee secretly admitted his words made sense, but deep down, she had no desire to study at all. Seeing her expression, Tang Jong mistakenly thought she was worried, and decided he had to help her quickly grasp the knowledge. He suddenly stood up, declared there was no time for playing around, and that they had to return to studying immediately, despite Sohee still wanting to admire the flowers. Though unwilling, Sohee still had to flash a radiant smile, pretending to be eager to go study immediately. The 2 walked together on the stone-paved path. Tang Jong pulled Sohee along, saying that it was now the way hour, still plenty of time to study the 1,000-character classic. Sohee was secretly astonished that he could tell the exact time just by looking at the sun's shadow, and wondered if she should ask him to teach her how to read a sundial too. Suddenly, Tang Jong stopped with a serious expression. He told Sohee to go ahead, while he would take a short stroll and return later. While waiting, Sohee decided to go inside and prepare lunch for him. She carefully arranged a lavish meal on the table. When Tang Jong returned, Sohee happily invited him to eat, thinking he was hungry. However, Tang Jong held out a piece of paper and asked if Sohee had dropped it in front of her room. Sohee was surprised to see a money pouch and a letter suddenly appear. She curiously asked Tang Jong about the letter's contents as he picked it up to read. As soon as he finished reading, Tang Jong's eyes immediately turned cold. Before Sohee could even ask what was happening, the letter suddenly burst into fierce flames. Tang Jong warned Sohee not to read such filthy things, leaving her secretly puzzled. Sohee realized the flame was the Samadhi true fire, and marveled at how it burned completely, leaving not a speck of ash. Tang Jong sternly said he would tell the Namgung child not to recklessly climb walls into another clan's territory. Sohye assented, secretly guessing the letter was left by Namgung Hui. She secretly thought that Tang Jong himself had climbed walls despite being the one who installed the mechanisms, so how could he blame others? Tang Jong responded to Sohye's thoughts, saying he had lived his entire life in the Tang clan, and knew every nook and cranny. He confidently asserted that he could read others' thoughts just by looking at their faces. Tang Jong confirmed the money pouch belonged to Sohye. It was the rice cake money she had lent to Namgung Hui. Then he suddenly asked directly, "Sohye, do you like the Namgung child?" Sohye flinched, quickly denied it, and said who would like such a brat. She awkwardly explained that she preferred someone a bit older. Hearing this, Tang Jong suddenly became unusually cheerful and urged them both to go eat. That night, Sohye returned to her room with many prepared belongings. She intended to share the tea and snacks with Songji. As soon as she reached the door, Songji blocked her, her face full of worry. Songji grabbed Sohye's hand, scolding her for disappearing all day without a word. Songji tearfully recounted her worries, saying she had imagined all sorts of terrible things happening to Sohye. Sohye quickly apologized, while Songji wiped her tears, saying that as long as she was safe, that was all that mattered. Songji kindly asked Sohye if she was hurt anywhere, and was invited by her to drink the tea gifted by Elder Tang Jong. Realizing it was the rare dream awakening tea, Songji was utterly astonished, while Sohye said it was just leftovers and invited her to eat more snow cake. Still bewildered, Songji happily went to prepare water to brew the precious tea. Meanwhile, Sohye looked around the room in a daze, feeling something was different. She realized the bedding had been replaced, recalling the explanation that Madam Jyn had done it. Songji apologetically said she had stayed up all night just to tell her this news, making Sohye apologize repeatedly. As she began pouring the tea, Songji seriously asked Sohye about her future plans. She expressed her worry, recounting the rumor that new maidservants summoned by Elder Tang Jong all disappeared without a trace. Sohye suddenly recalled Tang Jong's gaze, guessing he was only looking for spies. She reassured Songji that everything would be fine, secretly thinking she wasn't a spy but a member of the Tang clan lineage. Sohye's thoughts turned to the step-siblings she was about to face. She then asked Songji about the young clan head, and received the answer that he was useless. Songji instructed Sohye to keep what she was about to say an absolute secret. She described the young clan head as someone both foolish and ugly, with a filthy personality and a habit of abusing servants. Moreover, despite being taught martial arts for 5 years by the commander of the Black Cloud unit, his martial arts skills were inferior even to the third young master, who was 4 years younger. Songji sighed, worried that if he became clan head, the Tang sect would collapse, and she would have to go out and find work at an inn. So he wondered why such a person could become the young clan head. And Songji revealed that the clan head initially didn't intend to choose him. Songji explained that young Master Yun, Grand Madam Zugei's son, suffered from severed meridian disease. Songji recounted that the clan head had married the second madam because the Grand Madam couldn't bear an heir after 3 years, and this new madam had given birth to his first son. She added that the third madam even had 2 sons and a daughter, making Grand Madam Zhuge, with only young Master Yun, surely very heartbroken. Sohye listened in silence, pondering the sad stories of women in the Murim world. Songji irritably remarked that perhaps that's why young Master Seho, the second madam's son, was a fool who only knew how to ride on his older brother, the young clan head's coattails. Sohye was stunned to realize she had so many siblings, and wondered why they had so many children. Songji suddenly changed the subject, asking Sohye if she intended to study today. Sohye flinched at the unexpected question. In a train of thought, Songji wondered why someone who hated studying like Sohye was so diligent, and she admitted it was because the elder had ordered it. Songji told Sohye to study for about an hour and then go to sleep, while she would rest first. Sohye was filled with determination, telling herself she must learn to read, and resolving to memorize the 1,000-character classic this month. But after only 30 minutes, her resolve vanished, and she collapsed onto the table, exhausted, while Songji was fast asleep. After the meeting with the clan head that day, time passed in the Tang clan. Elder Tang Jong had been absent from his room for 2 days. Meanwhile, Tang Jong was extremely annoyed to hear that the Grand Patriarch of the Peng family was about to visit, but still had to adhere to etiquette. Sohye opened the room door, secretly thinking that even a great elder couldn't do everything he wanted. She decided that since she was alone today, she would skip cleaning to study, but then suddenly paused. Huan was already in the room. He smiled and greeted her as she entered. Seeing Huan clearly for the first time in daylight, Sohye noticed his sickly appearance and discolored hair, suspecting it was due to the severed meridian disease. She suddenly had a terrifying thought that when his hair turned completely white, that would be the end of his life. Huan called her name, jolting Sohye awake. She chastised herself for her impolite thoughts, then informed him that their grandfather was out, and he invited her closer. Sohye happily brought her books, saying that her grandfather had asked her to help Huan study, and she was surprised when he changed his mind. Huan smiled reassuringly, saying that he wasn't questioning her, but was simply happy that he could now exchange letters with Sohye. He offered to see how much she had learned, and Sohye obediently showed him her writing. Huan commented that the writing wasn't bad, but Sohye suddenly had a bad feeling. When Huan smiled and said, "Let's see your skills, Sohye," her instincts screamed at her to run immediately. Sohye recalled her previous study sessions with Huan. She remembered having exclaimed that Brother Huan was truly amazing. Every time she remembered a character, he would praise her as the greatest prodigy in Sichuan, making her extremely embarrassed. But right after that, he would point out 7 incorrect strokes, and make her copy each wrong character 20 times. She remembered proudly showing off her results, and Huan initially praised her excellent handwriting. However, he then began to scrutinize every single stroke, demanding that she rewrite it dozens of times until it was perfect. Returning to reality, Sohye tiredly asked for a break, but Huan pretended to cough and said he couldn't hear clearly. Just as she was about to say that today's calligraphy practice was enough, Huan suddenly coughed violently and vomited blood. He quickly reassured her that he was fine, while Sohye secretly thought, how could she not be worried? What a tumultuous morning. Afterwards, Sohye stretched and told herself that at least the elder's stories were very interesting. In a train of thought, Huan recalled grandfather Tang Jong clumsily carrying him and secretly marveled at his fairness. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind. "I thought you'd be here." Namgung Hui walked over, questioning Sohye why she hadn't come despite receiving his letter, saying that he had waited for a long time. Sohye awkwardly took his hand and explained, "Young master, I am illiterate." Namgung Hui was completely stunned, only able to utter one question, "Why?" Sohye explained that she couldn't read, and Elder Tang Jong had warned her not to climb the wall because there were traps. Namgung Hui accepted the reason, but then he was interrupted when someone else appeared. Huan suddenly appeared, asking Namgung Hui which family's guest he was, making the young master flustered. With a calm smile, Huan invited them both inside to talk. Both Sohye and Namgung Hui were startled, and the young master nervously gasped before agreeing. Inside, Huan had already prepared tea and invited them both to sit at the table. Huan politely asked Namgung Hui if the tea suited his taste. Namgung Hui quickly praised the tea, though he secretly thought he hadn't even touched his cup. Huan smiled, revealing that it was tea from Mount Mung in Sichuan, but Sohye realized that his smile was not a happy one. Caught red-handed, Namgung Hui apologized in embarrassment, while Huan secretly thought about how one shouldn't climb over other people's walls. Huan directly asked Namgung Hui which family's guest he was to escort him back, cornering him. Sohye secretly thought that Huan's way of asking was truly typical of the Tang family, like asking, "Whose child are you?" Meanwhile, Namgung Hui irritably thought that Huan himself had trespassed into the Grand Elder's residence. To avoid trouble, Sohye decided to intervene. She put down her teacup and told Huan not to be angry. Sohye unexpectedly spoke up, admitting that she had invited Namgung Hui, causing Huan to turn and look at her in surprise. She explained that Namgung Hui was her friend, and she had invited him over to play because she thought her grandfather was away. Sohye took all the blame, saying that if Huan wanted to scold someone, he should scold her. Huan only asked in surprise, "You have friends?" She quickly fabricated a story that they had met by chance a few days ago, went to the market together, and became friends. Huan looked at her with an incredulous expression, asking skeptically, "Really?" Sohye forced a smile, turned to urge Namgung Hui to confirm the story, and the young master stammered his agreement. Huan sighed, saying that he had misunderstood and thought a stranger was bothering Sohye, while Namgung Hui urgently asked to leave immediately. Namgung Hui quickly stood up, and Sohye also rose, saying that she would see him out and then return. Huan agreed, but his hand clenched so tightly that it shattered the teacup. With a smile, Huan instructed Sohye to return soon. Once outside, Sohye gave a strained laugh to Namgung Hui, saying that Huan was just like a buzzing fly. She pushed Namgung Hui away, and secretly thought that this young master was quite hot-headed. In the room, Huan sat alone, a blue serpentine aura swirling behind him, as he thought he had been mistaken about the other person's gentleness. Sohye and Namgung Hui walked together on the stone-paved path. Sohye secretly thought that Namgung Hui must have been very shocked, as this was his first time going out and being scolded by someone else's elder. She chuckled softly, thinking this was a valuable lesson for him. Namgung Hui suddenly stopped and thanked Sohye. He explained that he was grateful she had accepted him as a friend. Otherwise, the Namgung family's reputation would be ruined if anyone found him here. Sohye told him not to make mistakes in the future and blamed herself for getting too excited without thinking carefully. She sincerely apologized for abruptly bringing him here without considering his circumstances. Nam Gung-hui replied that there was no need to thank her, as she had already apologized, so everything was fine. He awkwardly mentioned the letter, saying it wasn't important, and told her to forget about it. So he bluntly reiterated that she couldn't read, so even if he wrote a letter, she wouldn't be able to read it. Nam Gung-hui asked in surprise why, as her hands were clearly covered in ink, making So-hee realize with a shock that she had been exposed. The young master playfully teased that she looked exactly like someone holding a brush for the first time, making So-hee irritably demand that the boy be quiet. Completely humiliated, So-hee could only beg him to forget about it. Nam Gung-hui insisted that So-hee must know how to read and write to reply to his letters. So-hee was stunned by his request, while he casually said that she would learn soon enough. The boy happily waved goodbye, telling her to take her time learning and send a reply later. So-hee grumbled to herself in annoyance, complaining that the boy always did as he pleased. Nam Gung-hui smiled brightly, confidently promising to send her a letter soon. Finally, the long-awaited first day of the 5 Great Clans Grand Assembly arrived. So-hee thought to herself, even though the elder had warned her not to draw attention, she was assigned to the main banquet hall, where all the guests would gather. Madam Jyn reassured her that she only meant well, but So-hee worried about being discovered by her father. Madam Jyn strictly instructed the maids, demanding that no item be misplaced. So-hee told herself that if she hid well, perhaps she could avoid being seen. Suddenly, she realized that the leader of the Xinyang maid group was also working here, and glaring at her. That person silently turned away after giving her an unpleasant look. So-hee clicked her tongue in annoyance at the other's attitude. She quickly brushed aside the distraction, reminding herself to find a place to hide. Distinguished guests from the great clans began to enter the banquet hall. So-hee found a discreet hiding spot right in front of a pillar near the Mo-young family's seating. Suddenly, a familiar voice calling Brother Huan startled her. Huan appeared with a girl named Ju-hui, who happily stated that she was feeling better thanks to his concern. Huan smiled gently upon hearing those words. Huan turned to Ju-hui, smiled, and said that she must have understood his situation. So-hee thought to herself, that was her half-sister, Tang Ju-hui, and judged her to look like a spoiled young lady. However, she quickly told herself that she didn't truly know Ju-hui's real personality. Suddenly, a pretty little girl with blonde hair came to ask to sit at the same table, making So-hee think the rumors about the Mo-young family having foreigners were true. So-hee politely invited the young lady to sit down, and the girl happily thanked her. A middle-aged man approached, affectionately calling the girl Ye. The man, who was the girl's father, asked why his daughter wasn't accepting his help. The girl boldly replied that an 8-year-old could sit on a chair by herself, and her name wasn't Ye. The girl named Soi asked her father not to call her by her nickname in public, to avoid being ridiculed as an overly doting father. Her father, Mo-young-ji, was not bothered at all, and even affectionately kissed his daughter's cheek, making So-hee realize who they were. So-hee confirmed that it was Mo-young-ji, the head of a branch family, and his only daughter, Mo-young-so-ye, whom he doted on immensely. Seeing Tang Jong and Huan pass by, So-hee briefly compared the doting father Mo-young-ji to her own father. Suddenly, Tang Jong's voice echoed in her head, ordering her to stay still and avoid being seen by Mu-hyuk. So-hee flinched as if a voice had pierced her head, and Tang Jong explained it was telepathy, telling her not to reply. When Tang Jong reprimanded her for accidentally replying, So-hee froze in astonishment. Amidst that, Mo-young-so-ye suddenly stood up, pointed, and declared that she would marry that person from the Tang family. The girl's declaration made those around her turn to look in astonishment. Mo-young-ji was speechless at his daughter's action. Tang Jong, who had just been pointed at, also turned back with a completely bewildered expression. Mo-young-ji hastily explained that it was the great elder of the Tang family, but Soi innocently asked if there was any law prohibiting marriage with a great elder. Mo-young-so-ye boldly declared that humans don't live for 1,000 years, so age was not an issue, causing her father to frantically call her name. Tang Jong looked tired, advising young lady Mo-young to choose another child as her husband. Mo-young-so-ye flatly refused, saying that everyone else looked like old men, which made the surrounding guests cover their mouths and laugh. A burly man named Peng Rak burst out laughing, teasing Tang Jong for being chosen by an 8-year-old. Tang Jong frowned in anger as Peng Rak continued to mock that he had never seen such a thing in his life. Peng Rak continued to laugh gleefully, taunting Tang Jong about his late marriage. Suddenly, Peng Rak became serious and launched a large needle towards Tang Jong. Tang Jong easily caught the needle, coldly replying to Peng Rak's indignant question that it was just a greeting. The two sat down at the table. Tang Jong asked about his situation, and Peng Rak humorously replied that he was busy building his own coffin. Tang Jong poured wine, teasing back that he would prepare an offering table for him, and Peng Rak happily agreed. An official cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the entire banquet hall. The official solemnly declared the banquet officially open, inviting everyone to enjoy themselves. The chaotic scene was summarized. Peng Rak demanded wine, Moyong Soye demanded marriage, and her father was speechless. So he observed from a distance, wondering why such a formal event had become so messy. Looking at the Tang family's scene, Sohye decided to give up trying to understand what was happening. At this moment, her train of thought continued. Sohye was heading towards the Great Elder's pavilion with the two elders, Tang Jong and Peng Rak. She was secretly grateful to Elder Tang Jong for taking her out, but also worried because this action was too conspicuous. Tang Jong asked Peng Rak if he was leading him to a dust pit, but Peng Rak replied that Sohye had already cleaned it thoroughly. Peng Rak turned to look at Sohye, asking who she was, which surprised Sohye because someone like him would remember a maid's name. Tang Jong narrowed his eyes, thinking of Sohye. In his mind, he wondered if she was Huan's granddaughter, but then dismissed the thought because of her maid's attire. Speaking to Peng Rak, Tang Jong admitted that even though Sohye had no relation to Huan, she looked exactly like her. Peng Rak agreed, recounting how he had even checked Sohye's face to see if it was a mask, and remarked that now only they remembered Huan. As Tang Jong secretly thought he was the only one who still remembered Yun, Sohye was confused, wondering who Huan was. Peng Rak chided his friend, calling this obsession a terrible hobby, which made Tang Jong defensively question him back. Peng Rak warned, "Don't project the image of the deceased onto the living," but Tang Jong denied it. The weight of their conversation dawned on Sohye, and a look of horror appeared on her face. Peng Rak continued to press, asking why Tang Jong kept a child who looked exactly like his deceased older sister, Huan. Sohye came to a painful conclusion. This was why he had taken her as a disciple. She recalled Tang Jong's past words, that her cries were also like Huan's, further confirming her feeling that he always saw someone else in her. The thought that she was merely a substitute for his lost sister, an explanation for his unusual kindness, plunged her into despair. Noticing her distress, Tang Jong sharply told Peng Rak to stop spouting nonsense in front of the child. Peng Rak quickly softened his tone, while Tang Jong grumbled irritably about his friend's loose tongue. To change the atmosphere, Peng Rak called out, "Sohye, come here." She quietly replied, "Yes," and stepped forward. A blue aura emanated from Tang Jong's hand. As he placed his hand on Sohye's back, Peng Rak asked if he was planning a grand speech. Tang Jong then revealed the truth to his friend. Sohye was Muhyuk's youngest daughter and his own granddaughter. Completely shocked and embarrassed, Peng Rak immediately bowed and apologized to Sohye for his terrible behavior. Sohye was startled and flustered, quickly waving her hand and saying it was nothing. Peng Rak touched her hair, musing that bloodlines were truly mysterious, then reconfirmed her name as Sohye. He placed his hand on Sohye's head, promising that one day he would host a grand feast at the Peng family estate to apologize to her. Tang Jong suddenly pushed Peng Rak's hand away, shouting loudly, "How dare you pull my precious granddaughter's hair," leaving Peng Rak stunned. Sohye forced a smile, reassuring them that she was fine. Tang Jong took Sohye's hand, gently telling her to come with him. He promised that when they returned, Grandpa would tell her about the person named Yan. Sohye obediently complied, her heart full of questions. Left behind, Peng Rak watched their retreating figures, and told himself that perhaps he really was getting old. He lightly punched his chest, lamenting that just a little meat had made him feel heavy-hearted. Peng Rak decided to take a walk alone, while Tang Jong noticed everyone parting to make way for him. As they walked along the empty path, Tang Jong asked Sohye if she was curious about Huan, and she admitted she was. He began to explain that Huan was his older sister, who had passed away at Sohye's current age, leaving her stunned. In a flashback, Huan appeared as a talented, bold, and somewhat mischievous child, with every thought clearly visible on her face, just like Sohye. Tang Jong explained that because Huan's marriage had been arranged from the womb, she was not taught the martial arts of the Tang family. Sohye exclaimed in astonishment about being betrothed as a fetus, and Tang Jong confirmed it was an important marriage. He added that because she would become an outsider after marriage, Huan was only taught basic internal cultivation, but of course, she didn't give up. Memories flooded back of young Huan clinging to Tang Jong every day, begging him to teach her poison art. Tang Jong ended the story with regret, admitting that due to his foolish thought of not breaking family rules, he couldn't fulfill that wish for his sister. Tang Jong recounted that, at the age of 16, Huan had to leave the family for a political marriage. Then one day, he received a letter. The grim news reported that his older sister had passed away during childbirth. Neither the mother nor the child survived. He was tormented because he was wandering the martial world at the time, heard the news too late, and couldn't bid his sister a final farewell. He regretted thinking that if Huan had known martial arts, perhaps she wouldn't have passed away so helplessly. Returning to reality, Tang Jong sadly admitted that it was just an old man's lingering regret. So-hee softly called out, "Grandpa," gently holding his hand. With tear-filled eyes, she whispered an apology for bringing up his sad memories. Tang Jong reassured her that she was not to blame. He was the one who had created this situation. He frankly admitted that he initially paid attention to her only because she resembled Huan so much. He had thought that if Huan had given birth to a daughter, that child would probably have been like So-hee. So-hee suddenly understood. The reason he wanted to teach her martial arts was because he wanted her to have a different life than Huan. Tang Jong asserted that one talented person wasted by family rules was more than enough. So-hee hugged him tightly, saying she was fine and he didn't need to blame himself. She reflected that, before, she had treated him like a character in a story. So-hee realized that neither of them had truly seen through the other. Tang Jong playfully chided her gentleness, but So-hee only smiled back, saying she was fine because he had been honest with her. While he was still saying he knew she had been hurt, a figure suddenly appeared before them. Pengrock walked away, saying that this old man just wanted her to live freely, while Tang Jong secretly scoffed at the complaint. Turning back to So-hee, Pengrock advised her not to mind Tang Jong's greed, just listen and let it go in one ear and out the other. In an imaginary verbal spar, Tang Jong threatened to sew Pengrock's mouth shut, while Pengrock challenged that only celestial silkworm thread could accomplish such a feat. Pengrock gently placed a hand on So-hee's head and called her child. He suddenly remembered and respectfully called her name. "That's right, your name is So-hee." Smiling warmly, he advised her not to feel indebted because of her grandfather's words. "Just live a good life," Pengrock said, and So-hee smiled serenely. Tang Jong stood watching, silently contemplating his friend's words that it was enough for her to grow up well. Tang Jong admitted Pengrock was right, and Pengrock agreed that So-hee didn't need to bear the melancholy of an old man. Pengrock fumed in his thoughts, cursing Tang Jong's venomous mouth. After the story concluded, Pengrock declared it was time to discuss serious matters, causing So-hee to ask in bewilderment. "Indeed, a very important matter," Pengrock affirmed with confidence. The scene shifted to a room, where So-hee wondered what the task was. It turned out to be a drinking party, where Tang Jong urged Pengrock to drink, as they hadn't come out just to sit in silence. Tang Jong quipped that it was strange there was no poisoned wine in this raccoon den, making Pengrock question his choice of words for his residence. Pengrock grumbled about Tang Jong always setting out herbs and brewing poisons everywhere. Tang Jong's face hardened as he told Pengrock to put down what he was holding, seeing that he had poisoned needles ready. Pengrock looked at So-hee, then told Tang Jong that it seemed he had once been severely burned by the elder's poison. So-hee placed the grilled seafood on the table and asked, "More importantly, how is Huan? Is there any progress?" Tang Jong sadly replied that Huan's mother was desperately searching for an elixir, but things weren't going smoothly, and it might take another year or two. Pengrock immediately asked if he had let Huan meet the ghost hand miracle doctor yet. Tang Jong recounted that the physician had come to the capital as if bestowing a favor, but then merely wandered around. He irritably added that the person had abruptly left for Wuhan the day before. Tang Jong explained that the physician's rule was not to get involved in troublesome matters, and helping Huan would entangle him in the family's succession struggle. Hearing this, So-hee secretly thought that the medical profession in this world was truly harsh, no different from thugs being dragged into a brawl. She tried to rack her brain, thinking that a physician nicknamed Ghost Hand must have been mentioned somewhere in the novel. Suddenly, So-hee remembered an important detail. She recalled that one of Nam Gung-hui's fortuitous encounters was the Ghost Hand Miracle Doctor's secret cave, located in a lake amidst a deep valley. This lake had a strange characteristic. It would fill up and then recede every full moon night. According to the original story, Nam Gung-hui dived into the lake at that exact moment, and he found the entrance to the secret cave left by the physician. So he deduced that in the novel, Nam Gung-hui only found relics, but now, perhaps the physician was still alive. A glimmer of hope suddenly flashed in her mind. If it was the Ghost Hand Miracle Doctor, could he cure Huan's severed meridian disease? But then she became disheartened, remembering Pengrock's words that the chance of him agreeing to treat was very low. A bold idea flashed in So-hee's mind. What if she and the elder broke into that cave to steal some? She remembered that Nam Gung-hui had collected many rare spiritual elixirs. Perhaps there was something that could help Huan, but she quickly dismissed the idea, because if she carried out such a righteous theft, she would again be suspected. Returning to reality, So-hee sighed wearily, and Pengrock immediately noticed, asking why she sighed. Tang Jong thought So-hee was sad about Huan, so he told her to go study. Pengrock immediately objected, scolding Tang Jong for making So-hee study even on a day like this. He slammed his hand on the table and firmly told So-hee to sit down, no more studying. So-hee hesitated in surprise and delight. Peng Rak pulled a chair for Sohye to sit down while Tang Jong also agreed. Stroking Sohye's head, Peng Rak remarked that the Tang family children were truly small. Tang Jong warned Peng Rak to be gentle and asked if he was mocking him, but Peng Rak denied it. To apologize, Peng Rak said he would give Sohye a gift. Sohye stared in astonishment at what Peng Rak was about to give her. He handed her a silver token engraved with a tiger and explained that, if she ever needed help, she should bring it to the Peng family. Sohye took the token, as Peng Rak added that anyone in his family would take care of her upon seeing it. Tang Jong wondered about Peng Rak's generosity, but he thought it was nothing compared to making his friend's granddaughter almost cry. Tang Jong smirked, saying that even if she cried, he wouldn't give anything away. Peng Rak sighed, telling Tang Jong to do as he pleased. Tang Jong explained to Sohye that what she received was called a silver repayment token. This silver token was a promise of repayment, valid for 50 years, and the Peng family had to fulfill any request. Peng Rak laughed heartily, reminding Sohye that it could only be used once, so she should use it wisely. Sohye brightly thanked the elder. Then, she turned to Peng Rak and asked if she could ask him something, and he happily agreed. Sohye curiously asked why the silver token was engraved with a tiger. Tang Jong urged Peng Rak to tell his granddaughter about his family's history, but he self-deprecatingly said that the Peng family was just a bunch of country bumpkins. Peng Rak brushed it off, saying there was no special reason for the tiger engraving. He explained that his Peng family was known as the Tiger of Hebei. Sohye secretly wondered if it was an exaggerated name like other sects, while Peng Rak said they only engraved the tiger to show off. Tang Jong grew tired of the superficial explanation, so he clarified that the reason lay in their clan's martial arts. He revealed that many of the Peng clan's techniques mimicked the movements of a fierce tiger. Tang Jong even added that Peng Rak's nickname was Tiger Blade Emperor. Sohye expressed admiration, while Peng Rak cleared his throat, boasting that he was quite formidable in his prime. Tang Jong seized the opportunity, offering to tell some stories from his sworn brother's youth, making Sohye suddenly realize the situation. The young girl broke into a sweat as Peng Rak struck a proud pose, preparing for a lengthy recounting of his glorious past. Sohye hastily made an excuse about wanting to study to escape, but Peng Rak had already begun his story from 120 years ago. Tang Jong quietly took a sip of wine, secretly thinking that the young girl had no escape. Recalling the favor she had just received, Sohye resigned herself to fate, deciding to be a good granddaughter. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Simyang, the leader of the Xinyang Maid group, angrily threw down a towel, mocking someone who was showing off in the banquet hall. She gnashed her teeth, cursing Sohye as a fake, using her beauty to climb higher. She recalled that Sohye used to be just a maid, who didn't dare to look her in the eye. The Xinyang group leader bitterly imagined Sohye living a life of luxury if she married a young master. Her indignation peaked when she thought of everyone surrounding Huan. The Xinyang group leader gnashed her teeth, feeling extremely uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Sohye reluctantly entered the banquet hall, secretly wishing she could be working somewhere else today. But then she was assigned here again, carrying a tea tray with a forced smile. Sohye glanced around, a thought suddenly popping into her head. She wondered if the reason Madam Jyn kept calling her here was to find her a husband. Sohye was skeptical, thinking Madam Jyn was overestimating her, as no young master would marry a maid. Sighing, she decided to push that thought aside and walk towards Nam Gung Hui's table. She respectfully offered the teacup to the young master. Nam Gung Hui smiled brightly, urging her to quickly refill the cup. Sohye secretly thought the boy looked even more excited than usual, and quickly poured the tea. She suddenly understood the reason when she glanced towards a rare sight. There, Moyongji was tearfully emotional beside Tang Jong and his young daughter. Suddenly, Moyong Soye boldly declared, "Supreme Elder, marry me." Tang Jong sighed and refused, but the young girl immediately asked why and listed the advantages of marrying her. The young girl confidently boasted that she was both young and beautiful, making Peng Rak and the guests burst into laughter, while Moyongji awkwardly asked his daughter's age. Moyong Soye cheerfully replied that she was 8 years old. Tang Jong smiled and asked in return, "Then do you know how old I am?" The young girl decisively waved her hand, declaring that age was not an issue in love. Moyongji could only helplessly watch his daughter, while Tang Jong advised him to just ignore it, as the young girl would forget in a few years. Moyongji worried that his daughter would still insist on marriage in the future. He even considered going into seclusion to avoid it. Amidst the chaotic scene, Sohye could only stand and watch, while Nam Gung Hui appeared utterly delighted. At another table, Juhui was drinking when she suddenly paused. She scanned the banquet hall, noticing Wun's absence, and began observing the clan head's wife. Her gaze stopped on a young master her age, whom she guessed was Seho. Sohye stood behind, bitterly thinking about the injustice of having the same father, yet one was a young master and the other a maid. Suddenly, Nam Gung Hui gently tugged her sleeve. The boy smiled brightly, offering to let Sohee sit down, fearing her legs might be tired. Sohee frantically waved her hand in refusal, secretly thinking that the young master's offer could land her in big trouble. Seeing this, Nam Gung-hui immediately looked sad, leaving Sohee confused as to why he was hurt by her refusal. Nam Gung-hui's father coldly spoke up, saying that if he sat next to his son, he would be the one to bleed. An angry shout echoed along with the sound of a table shattering, startling Sohee with the continuous chaos of the banquet. A young man named Tang Hyokang grabbed Seho by the collar, offering advice that was full of sarcastic undertones. Hyokang sneered, feigning innocence as he asked why Seho was angry when he was merely quoting ancient sages. Seho roared, exposing Hyokang's intention that he was implying Seho was unworthy of the young master's position and should withdraw. Clan head Mu Hyuk appeared, loudly ordering Tang Hyokang to release his grip immediately. Despite the order, Hyokang tightened his grip even more and growled, calling Seho a brat. From afar, a mysterious man wearing glasses quietly observed everything from behind his paper fan. The man lowered his fan, coldly questioning clan head Mu Hyuk about the ongoing chaos. Amidst the chaos, Tang Hyokang's uncle spoke up, suggesting that children's squabbles shouldn't be turned into a big issue. Clan head Mu Hyuk gnashed his teeth, suppressing his anger at the disgraceful scene. He then offered a forced apology on behalf of his nephew. The mysterious uncle quietly observed everything from behind his paper fan. Meanwhile, a young master of the Zhuge clan secretly sighed, disappointed by the lack of control among the other young masters and worried about his clan's future. The uncle called his nephew, Hyokang, by name, and reminded him not to cause trouble, but Hyokang casually replied that it was a misunderstanding. Hyokang sneered, saying he was merely discussing scriptures with that young master. Clan head Mu Hyuk sarcastically remarked that young master Zhuge must be very learned. He continued his implicit warning, hoping that person would demonstrate with actions instead of troublesome words. Hyokang clasped his hands, feigning respect, and said he would remember the Tang clan head's teaching. Afterwards, he and his uncle turned to the guests, offering apologies for causing a commotion. Witnessing the act, Sohee was secretly astonished by Hyokang's brazen attitude. Hyokang's uncle turned to Mu Hyuk, complaining that if his own family had a troublesome young master, then this family had a troublesome nephew. The atmosphere of the banquet was completely ruined. The guests began to complain and leave. Contrary to everyone else, Sohee was secretly delighted, hoping the banquet would end soon. Young Master Zhuge glanced at Sohee and silently reminded her to behave properly, but Sohee only thought about how she had to stand while others were seated. Nam Gung-hui sat at the banquet table, his expression pensive and slightly startled. His father noticed and inquired, but Nam Gung-hui merely replied that it was nothing. Immediately after, Nam Gung-hui stood up, excusing himself to use the restroom to leave the table. At Nam Gung-hui's request, Sohee began to lead the way for him. As they passed by, Tang Jong watched Nam Gung-hui's retreating back. He silently watched the two children leave the banquet hall. Upon reaching the outer courtyard, Nam Gung-hui walked straight ahead decisively. Sohee, confused, called out to him, saying that the restroom was in a different direction. Nam Gung-hui turned back, and casually said he no longer needed to use the restroom. He smiled, and explained that Elder Poison King had asked him to take her somewhere for about an hour. Sohee was completely stunned by this unexpected revelation. She began to deduce, wondering if Tang Jong had indeed asked Nam Gung-hui for a favor. Realizing her great-grandfather knew her feet hurt and deliberately created an opportunity for her to rest, Sohee secretly appreciated his thoughtfulness. Nam Gung-hui asked if she knew of a place where they could pass the time. After a moment's thought, Sohee had an idea and asked if he had ever been to Hoga 1. Nam Gung-hui showed curiosity at the unfamiliar name. Sohee proudly introduced Hoga 1, a beautiful garden with pavilions and a pond. She explained that this was the private rear garden reserved for esteemed guests, and Nam Gung-hui could only exclaim in surprise. He looked up at the cherry blossom petals falling in the wind, completely enchanted by the scenery. Nam Gung-hui recited a poem about cherry blossoms floating on the water, making Sohee secretly admire his knowledge. Afterwards, he turned and invited Sohee to sit beside him on the railing. Nam Gung-hui urged her, and Sohee happily agreed. Sohee hesitantly sat down next to Nam Gung-hui, thinking it would be fine since no one was around. She was suddenly awestruck by the scene before her. As they both sat enjoying the view, Sohee realized that spring had arrived without her noticing. Nam Gung-hui was also quietly enjoying the warm spring breeze. Sohee smiled contentedly, feeling so relaxed she could fall asleep. Suddenly, her foot slipped off the railing. Sohee's shoe flew off and splashed into the water. She was flustered, unsure how to retrieve the shoe. Immediately, Nam Gung-hui dashed off. To Sohee's astonishment, Sohee panicked as she saw him jump into the water without hesitation, while he simply told her to stand still. Nam Gung-hui quickly surfaced and said he had retrieved the shoe. Sohye worried as she saw his entire body drenched. He knelt before a flustered Sohye and told her to stand still. Namgung Hui gently used the hem of his robe to dry her bare foot, and said that a young lady should not go barefoot. Too embarrassed, Sohye hastily wanted to do it herself and asked for her shoe back. Namgung Hui smiled reassuringly, telling her to wait a moment as he was almost done. He carefully put the dried shoe back on her foot. Sohye reminded him not to treat just anyone so kindly, but Namgung Hui innocently replied that his father always helped his mother put on her shoes. His words made Sohye imagine the Namgung patriarch as a more devoted husband than he appeared. Namgung Hui awkwardly told Sohye that she was not an ordinary person. He promised that upon returning to his manor, he would officially send her something. Sohye, confused, asked again, but Namgung Hui merely replied that it was a secret. She then urged him to go change his drenched clothes, but he thought it was fine. Sohye firmly stated that the guest house was nearby and it would be best for him to change. Namgung Hui worried that if he were seen, he would lose all dignity because people would think he was playing in the water. She reminded him that it was still cold, but he confidently replied that a martial artist would not fall ill just from getting wet. Finally, he gave in and agreed to go change, making Sohye smile in satisfaction. Namgung Hui unexpectedly grabbed her sleeve. He smiled brightly and asked if she would accompany him to the guest house. Sohye happily agreed to go with him. She secretly thought it was fortunate that the guest house was currently empty. That way, no one would see his drenched appearance. Sohye was astonished to see Namgung Hui change clothes at lightning speed and wondered if his father knew about this. After changing, Namgung Hui suggested they both return to the banquet hall. They walked together under the green trees. Namgung Hui suddenly asked Sohye about her plans for tomorrow. She replied indifferently that her daily chores were probably waiting for her. He seemed displeased, but Sohye insisted that she also had to work tomorrow. Namgung Hui looked disappointed and accepted it. Sohye secretly thought that even though he seemed sad, she couldn't just abandon her duties. Just then, another maid approached and asked permission to speak with Namgung Hui. She explained that the banquet hall was short-staffed and asked if she could take Sohye with her. Namgung Hui immediately refused, asserting that Sohye would go with him. Sohye smiled reassuringly, telling him to go ahead and she would follow. He reluctantly agreed but told her to come back quickly, and Sohye promised to see him soon. After Namgung Hui left, the two maids stood watching him go. The other maid called Sohye curtly, making her secretly annoyed. Sohye followed and asked where they were going, but only received a curt reply. She recognized the familiar face as belonging to the Xinyang group and began to suspect she was about to be bullied again. Sohye stopped, demanding to be told their destination. Suddenly, a bucket of dirty water came out of nowhere, splashing directly onto Sohye. The empty wooden bucket rolled on the ground. The culprit was revealed to be the leader of the Xinyang group and her accomplices, who sneered that even a gentle cat would climb onto the stove. Soaked and dirty all over, Sohye was stunned by the implied meaning of the remark. The leader of the Xinyang group stepped forward, questioning if this was Sohye's plan, accusing her of seducing even the heir of the Namgung family. In her imagination, Sohye was using a honey trap to make Namgung Hui change clothes for her. Sohye angrily retorted, calling those words nonsense, and disparaging her opponent as looking like dog scraps, which stunned the entire group. Sohye smiled coldly, declaring that she wasn't finished speaking. She angrily questioned who taught those people such a despicable dirty water trick, and asked if they were insane. The jealous leader of the maids screamed, claiming Sohye was like a shameless leech who stole Ase's chance to attend the banquet. Sohye calmly retorted that if that were the case, they should just tell Ase to go. There was no need for such a dirty trick. She sarcastically remarked that those people were just slaves vying for favor, which made the leader angrily retort that she was properly paid. Overcome with rage, the leader raised her hand to slap Sohye and teach her a lesson. However, Sohye quickly grabbed her opponent's wrist, her eyes sharp, as she asked how she dared to touch her. With a crack, the attacker's wrist snapped, causing her to collapse, screaming in pain, while her accomplices were horrified. Sohye looked at her hand, wondering why it could break so easily. The leader stood up, calling Sohye an ungrateful orphan who dared to touch a member of the Tang clan, but Sohye calmly asked who she was. Pressed for an answer, she stammered that her mother also came from the Tang clan. Sohye coldly exposed that her opponent didn't even bear the Tang surname and was just a fraudulent imposter. Having lost the argument, the leader could only tremble in anger and repeat the insult that Sohye was just an orphan. A wave of killing intent emanated from the leader. In a fit of rage, she pulled out a knife and lunged at Sohye, vowing no forgiveness. The two remaining maids screamed in panic, calling the leader Simyang and trying to stop her. Sohye remained still, defiantly asking what would happen if she didn't yield. Simyang threatened to ruin Sohye's face, but Sohye calmly invited her to go ahead. Faced with Sohye's terrifying composure, Simyang's knife-wielding hand began to tremble. The sharp blade grazed Sohye's cheek, leaving a small trail of blood. Despite the wound, Sohye smirked, challenging her attacker to see if she could bear the consequences. Simyoung trembled, realizing she had just attacked a member of the Tang clan. In a fit of rage, Simyoung lunged to stab Sohye, but she calmly thought to herself about her opponent's slowness. Suddenly, a firm hand swiftly gripped Simyoung's knife-wielding wrist. The knife clattered to the ground. A man in a green robe appeared, making Simyoung cry out in terror. "Seventh Elder!" The man, Tang Jong, sternly reprimanded Simyoung for disgracing the Tang clan. With sharp eyes, he warned that she had overstepped her authority. Tang Jong ordered the trembling group of maids to return to work, declaring that he would report the incident to the general manager. Simyoung could only bow her head in resentful obedience. Sohye silently watched the group flee. Tang Jong turned and called her, making Sohye startle and respond. He handed her a clean cloth to wipe her wound. Then, he instructed her not to cause any more trouble, as Elder Tang Jong already had too many things to worry about. Sohye forced a smile, pleading with him to keep the matter a secret. Tang Jong flatly refused, making Sohye inwardly lament that she was doomed. Afterwards, in her private room, Sohye anxiously looked at her new outfit. She tried on the cream-colored dress, feeling it was awkwardly short. A new maid complimented Sohye's clothes and how clean she looked after bathing. Sohye thanked the maid, named Kyung-ah, who awkwardly replied that it was only because Sohye truly looked like she needed help. Sohye teased, recalling their first meeting when Kyung-ah treated her like a ghost, and Kyung-ah stammered that it was because she had been frightened. Sohye joked, then sincerely admitted that without Kyung-ah, she would still be in a terrible state because everyone else had shunned her. Kyung-ah angrily complained about the cruelty of Simyoung's maids, and Sohye completely agreed. Sohye suddenly noticed Kyung-ah's scratched palms, and gently inquired about them. She offered to bring a good ointment to the room for Kyung-ah, and her new friend awkwardly agreed. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from outside, and Sohye recognized it as Songji. Songji entered, commenting on Sohye's clean appearance before announcing that Elder Tang Jong was looking for. Sohye flinched, inwardly guessing that the seventh elder had reported her troublemaking to her grandfather. She hastily excused herself to Kyung-ah, promising to visit later, while Kyung-ah anxiously told her to be careful. The scene shifted to another building on the estate at dusk. Sohye stood before Tang Jong's room, trembling as she asked for permission to enter, secretly hoping she wouldn't be scolded too much. A cold voice from within granted her entry, and she timidly stepped across the threshold. Tang Jong immediately reprimanded her for not being able to stay still for even an hour, and Sohye mumbled an apology. He continued his lecture, saying that it was fortunate Gunmyong had passed by, and reminded him that he had told her to be careful. Suddenly, the sound of a ceramic object shattering echoed. Sohye realized in horror that Tang Jong had just crushed his last precious ceramic item in a fit of rage. Immediately after, Tang Jong suddenly reached out, grabbing Sohye's chin and face in terrifying silence.